Welcome to the Reading for Wellbeing podcast. I'm your host, Professor Pozzulo. Today I'm talking with Dr. Jennifer Heisz, author of Move the Body, Heal the Mind, Overcome Anxiety, Depression, and Dementia, and Improve Focus, Creativity, and Sleep. Welcome, Dr. Heisz. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Before we start talking about your great book, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in kinesiology and the whole mind-body connection?
Sure, yeah. So my training was my PhD is in cognitive neuroscience, and my postdoc, I focused on healthy aging. So I really am coming at it from more of a psychological background. But when I started studying the effects of aging and the aging brain, one major thing that kept coming up was like lifestyle prevention and exercise. So this was a huge sort of turning point in my academic focus, where I then started to incorporate exercise in as a stimulus to understand how the brain works and how we can preserve its functions.
Amazing. I want to get into the science around all that. But before we start talking science, when your book starts off with, very personal journey and how you sort of started, wanting to lace up your running shoes and actually ultimately end up doing a triathlon. And congratulations on that. Can you share maybe just a little bit about your personal journey and what led you to really kind of starting this movement around activity and well-being?
Sure, yeah. So the book, Move the Body, Heal the Mind, it really is, it's a personal journey through the research, but also through sort of my own experiments with exercise. And we talk about triathlon, but this was definitely out of my purview for a very long time. I wouldn't have called myself active. I sort of thought of myself just more of like a scholar, pretty much sedentary. And that sort of lifestyle started to catch up to me in grad school. So right in my 20s, when sort of the stress and intensity of being in a very competitive program started to really set in, I started noticing some like pretty severe anxiety, and wasn't sure what it was, how to manage it. And fortunately, what I found to be sort of the most helpful was exercise. I had this old bike I borrowed from a friend, and I live in Hamilton, so it's pretty hilly with the escarpment. And I remember like taking that bike out, going for a ride, and sort of for the first time in a really long time, after the ride was done, feeling this sense of like just peace. Like my mind was clear, my thoughts were calm, and I hadn't really experienced that in a really long time. And it sort of got me personally invested in the benefits of exercise on the brain, and sort of wanted to know more about that.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you probably started having some very positive feelings after moving, and that then, led you, as I say, to ultimately doing a triathlon. Can you talk a little bit about what the science tells us happens to our body when we start to move, and what that impact is on our well-being?
Yeah, so there's some pretty basic things that start to happen as soon as we move. So, for most of us, we're sitting a lot during the day, and sitting is not the best for health, because when we sit for long periods of time, our body kind of goes into this hibernation mode. And so a key thing that we need to be thinking about, even if we're not exercising or going to the gym, is just breaking up sedentary time. And the reason breaking up sedentary time is so beneficial is because once we start moving, we increase brain blood flow. blood flow throughout the body, but brain blood flow in particular. And this brings all the nutrients, all the energy supply to the brain so that it can thrive and function optimally. So this is sort of one of the key things that exercise does. It also, if we're sort of exercising more vigorously, for example, one really cool thing that exercise does that we're starting to discover and learn more about every day is the benefit of lactate. And so people might hear lactate and think lactic acid. Well, yeah, it's sort of, you can think of it as the same thing. Lactate plus an acid creates this lactic acid, but in the body, it just exists as lactate. So, when you're exercising, maybe you've gone to a fitness class, a spin class, or an aerobics class, and the fitness instructor is like, okay, those legs are burning, keep going, get the lactic acid moving. Well, that's the same thing. So that's the lactate we're talking about. So that sort of burning sensation in the muscles. When we are exercising above our anaerobic capacity or aerobic capacity in the anaerobic threshold. That's sort of, you can think of it as when your breathing becomes more difficult. So once you start it's difficult to have a conversation, you're working out pretty difficultly, you can maybe say a few words, but you can get out a full sentence. That's where you're above your lactate threshold. And this is important because this is when lactate starts to accumulate at a rapid rate. Now, it's accumulating in the muscles. And lactate, just to be clear, is not causing that burning sensation. That was something that scientists and the public believed for a very long time, but it turns out that's not true. Lactate actually serves as a fuel source. But the cool thing about lactate is that it moves out of the muscle into the bloodstream through the blood-brain barrier, reports to a brain region called the hippocampus, which is a key brain region for memory and learning. It's also the brain region that's sort of devastated by Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. But when lactate's there, it seems to be acting as a fuel source for neurons, so helping them to send messages and communicate information. But it's also stimulates this growth factor, like a miracle grow essentially for neurons, called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. And this growth factor helps support the survival, functioning, and thriving of brain cells, in particular, throughout the brain, but in particular in that hippocampal region, which is associated with improvements in memory and benefits for stress regulation.
Fascinating. So my first follow-up question to that is, would walking at sort of a regular pace, not really out of breath, would that get you where you need to be to get benefits?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on your fitness level. So if you're just starting out, walking can do it. So if you're walking at a brisk pace and you find it difficult to, have a conversation, that's sort of, we call that the talk test. So if it becomes difficult to have a conversation, then you're at sort of a hard enough intensity for you that is producing sort of this lactate, this energy supply for the brain. So yes, walking can work if you haven't been active for a while. But one thing that we did in our research is we did this interval walking. So we had seniors from the community. They came into the Physical Activity Center of Excellence, PACE, our gym at McMaster. And we had them on the treadmill, and they either walked at sort of a moderate pace, flat treadmill, or they walked on the treadmill and intermittently we elevated the incline and got them to pick up the speed. So creating this burst of intensity. Now, not like a high intensity interval or that you might think of when you think of a Peloton workout or something. But for those individuals, it was challenging and it was difficult for them to have their conversation. And what we found was that the interval walking produced significantly greater benefits for memory than the regular walking. Now, if you don't have a treadmill, that's okay. You could go out on your regular walk outside and maybe pick up the pace between light posts or add a few hills within your walking route, because that will naturally increase the challenge and difficulty for you and get you sort of up to that moderate to vigorous level that we would like to aim for.
Okay. Do you need to keep increasing your intensity, or like can you sort of stay at the same pace, like even if you do your interval, like can you repeat that kind of indefinitely, or do you kind of have to keep pushing yourself to get the benefits?
It depends on what you're going for. So, athletes training and stuff I had to do when I was training for the triathlon was you always have to sort of, if you're going for a goal, you that's beyond your fitness level, for example, you have to exercise a little bit longer. So let's say, for example, you're training for a marathon or even like a 10K run, and you currently don't run. So you can't go out and run a 10K tomorrow. You have to gradually build up the distance week over week over week until you inch your way there, right? So it's sort of the same thing. Your body adapts to exercise. So it gets used to the certain intensity or a certain duration. And it gets used to it by making all these amazing adaptations within the body. So your cardiovascular ability, like your fitness level increases. Maybe if you're lifting weights, your strength will increase. And the body gets used to that stimulus or that stressor. And so if your goal is to continuously get fitter and fitter and fitter, or to try to push yourself above that lactate threshold, what ends up happening is you'll get fitter, and so you'll have to push it a little bit more to get there. But that said, thinking back to when I was talking about breaking up sedentary time, this it doesn't matter, like just breaking up the sedentary time. So one research study looked at every 30 minutes, standing up and walking around the office for a 2-minute movement break. Like just walking, self-paced, whatever. Not like you're not getting up and doing burpees in the office. You're just a self-paced walk. And this has been shown to counteract the reductions in brain blood flow that you see from sitting.
Wow, that's fascinating. And I love it because it's so doable. Like
It's doable.
it's doable. You don't need to, change your outfit or, go somewhere. You can actually just get up from where you're sitting and just walk for a couple of minutes. And
Exactly.
I love that. I love that tip. I love that strategy.
And there's pretty awesome research looking at just even the benefits of a 10-minute self-paced walk. So 10 minutes, like once around the block, maybe twice, depending on how big your block is, improves your focus and attention. It improves your creativity abilities. It improves your mood. So these acute benefits to well-being that happen immediately after exercise or movement can be had with very little movement, which is really amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And one question that a lot of people want to know is, like, how often do I have to do I have to do something every day to get benefits, or can I do something maybe once a week and get benefits?
Yeah, there is research showing sort of the weekend warriors, where people, when you have time on the weekend and you're not necessarily working, you go out for like a long run, or you get your workouts in those like sort of 2 days that you're off, and the benefits are there. So that is better than nothing for sure. And so rest assured, you don't have to do something every day. Mind you, so the goal set by the Canadian guidelines is 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per week of aerobic, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. Now, that seems like a lot, right? Especially if you're not moving much. But you can break that up into like a 30-minute walk, 5 days a week. that would get you there. And then adding in 2 days of resistance exercise. And that doesn't have to be lifting heavy weights. That could be, resistance band, body weight exercises. And the goal, I mean, that's the goal, but the message is becoming really clear in both the mental health and physical health literature that some is better than none. So just any movement is better than no movement. So if you're feeling like this week's hard, I don't feel like moving this week, that's okay. Give yourself the compassion to be flexible and do what you can. Maybe something like one trick I have when I'm just like have no time and no energy is I just park a little bit further away from the grocery store door and I walk in,
Yeah.
And maybe it takes me like a few more steps longer, but that counts too. Every bit counts,
Yeah. I will confess, I actually do that strategy as well. So if I'm feeling guilty, I will park a little bit further away. And that way I feel like I'm sort of maximizing my time because I'm getting a few extra steps in and yet I'm running an errand that I need to do. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Now, were there, was there any research that you came across that was surprising to you that really sort of said, "Oh wow, that I didn't expect that or I didn't see that coming"?
Yeah. So the research around sort of antidepressant drugs and like which can be super effective for some people, but I didn't realize how ineffective they were for many people, which was really, I think, upsetting actually to think that the approach of healthcare is to really start that as a first line defense in many cases, when in fact it may not work for everyone, and that in line with that, so for those who do not respond, like I saw rates from anywhere between like 1 in 3 to half of people who take it don't respond, which is quite alarming. And that some of the most recent research that compiles all the studies together and does like a comparison found that some have found that exercise is on par with antidepressant drugs, and in some cases can even provide greater benefits, especially for those people who are non-responders. And so, when you think about exercise, it's like, oh, well, that's just like something we do when we have time. No, no, no. We need to start thinking of it as medicine. It is as powerful, if not more powerful than medicine. And the amazing thing about exercise is that it not only targets one system, it's targeting many different systems within the brain and the body for optimal health.
That is very, very powerful information. And I think it certainly can't hurt. Exercise can't hurt. And if it can help with some of these more serious illnesses, then why not do it?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like an either or either. And
Exactly.
I don't mean to say that antidepressants don't work. They
Right.
certainly
Yep.
do for certain cases. But and in conjunction with exercise, even can have a greater benefit. Like some of the side effects can be reduced, and some of the dosage can be reduced. So it really is like a powerful line of research that did quite surprise me, actually.
Yeah, I've been reading a little bit about that work as well, and I too was really struck by how something that we I think doctors are a little bit more in tune now to prescribe exercise and walking, wellness walking. It really is amazing to see the power of that. You don't need special equipment. You can just, as you say, get outside, go around the block, or even in your house, walk around, and that can have some benefits. Can you talk a little bit? So, if we wanted to get sort of maximize our benefits of activity and exercise, can you tell me, like, give me an idea of how much we need to do? Is it really just making sure that we're pushing ourselves, or is there sort of a magic that, 150 minutes, is that to get us in the zone? How much do we
Mm-hmm.
need to do?
Mm-hmm. So like the minimum?
Yeah.
Well, so for brain health, which does translate more also to body health, we recently looked at the literature and did a review. Like the minimum is about 70 minutes of moderate activity per week and about 35 of vigorous, which is about half the guidelines. So that's the minimum. The optimal is around the guidelines, 150 minutes per week. But like I said, some is better than none, and you can break that up into 10-minute bouts or more. So it can just be like a 10-minute walk if that's all you have time for. I mean, one of the challenges is that exercising is hard. Like it is really hard, and a lot of people have barriers to getting active. The brain is one of them that we all share around this like energy conservation of the brain. It's sort of default mode is to try to conserve energy, which exercise goes against. So you're not alone. I mean, exercise is hard for me, even though I study the benefits, know the benefits, have felt the benefits. It still remains a daily struggle. And I think this is why, it's tricky to prescribe it for things, for conditions, especially like for mental health conditions where motivation can be a barrier, to moving. But this reconceptualization that it doesn't have to be like a 1-hour hard workout at the gym. It can be sort of a 10-minute self-paced walk out in nature. Anything really that you enjoy where your body's moving, gardening, dancing, tai chi, yoga, all of these forms of movement have been shown to have both physical and mental health benefits.
I love that there's so many options available, really. And as you say, you can break it up into chunks. You can do 10 minutes 3 times a day, or, a couple of 15 minutes a couple of times, or whatever works for you. So it's really easy. Or you can make it fit your lifestyle or
Yeah.
fit your life.
Yeah.
If there were 3 top messages you wanted to give our readers and listeners, what would they be?
Okay, 3 top. Put it in your calendar.
I like that.
This is key. It's so simple. But not just put it in your calendar, but make it a priority. So for me, I have it in my morning. I do it every morning. It's just routine. Okay, I do my meditation. I'm learning a language. I'm learning Greek right now. I learn Greek, and then I go and exercise. And that's sort of the stack of my habits. But if it's in the calendar and you have, a commitment, and treat it like a commitment, like you would any appointment, that really, really goes a long way. It sounds really simple. Another thing is, choosing something that you enjoy doing is a big one, because, this is a lifelong commitment. Like you can't just go, for a week and then that's it. The benefits of exercise really do come immediately after every workout, and you need that continuous, consistent stimulus to really get the benefits. Now, that said, we were talking just before the recording about sort of the tendency to kind of fall off and fall back on the wagon, and that's okay. The key thing is just keep coming back to it and maybe change it up. Like I find for me, the book is about triathlon, but I can't do that anymore. It doesn't fit into my life. It's too much time. So now I'm into resistance training. And I do outdoor walking. I love walking outside. So I've switched my exercise focus because that's what works for me right now based on my goals and my lifestyle. And so, I'm not going for hour-long runs anymore. I'm just like a half an hour quick at the gym and maybe a 1 hour walk or a 15-minute walk, whatever I can fit in.
Fantastic.
So being flexible, being compassionate with yourself, and having an open mind about what exercise looks like for you at different phases in your life. Yeah.
I like that. I like the variety, and make it fit you, make it fit your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I want to turn now to a segment I call Our Readers Want to Know. So these are questions from our book club members. So our first question is, and we've sort of talked about this one, but I think it's worth repeating. I think many people can agree that exercise is healthy, but what is the minimum amount of activity that someone should do to positively impact their well-being?
Okay. Yeah. So the minimum, I would say every 30 minutes, get up for a 2-minute movement break. So if you're watching TV, and your TV has commercials, maybe still, get up during the commercial, even just get a glass of water, walk around, move back, and if you happen to be sort of stuck in the chair, like if you're on an airplane or if you're driving, even just squeezing the muscles a little bit can help, like invigorate them and encourage the blood flow. But so the 2-minute movement breaks every 30 minutes. And then, like I said, the 10-minute self-paced walk can do a lot to boost your well-being. And then across the week, we talked about sort of this 70 minutes of moderate exercise or 35 minutes of vigorous as being sort of the minimum for brain health benefits.
Excellent. Thank you. What do you recommend for someone who hasn't really ever been active and doesn't really have much time for it?
Okay. Yeah. So I think some of the tricks, like parking a little further away from like the door, that can go a long way. If there is a form of movement that you like, a lot of people find walking to be an easy point of entrance if that's for you, or if there's something different, like if you like cycling or swimming, dancing, gardening. I mean, we can pick a lot. Like, you don't have to be limited to what you think exercise is. It doesn't have to be hard work, It can be, and I would just start slow. An experiment, kind of treat it like a little mini experiment. Like, what do I like? What do I feel like? What makes me feel the best? And what do I want to keep coming back and doing? So, I would go easy and go and keep in mind, some movement is better than no movement. Just keep that mantra in mind, as you start going. And then, a lot of people find it helpful to have like a coach or a personal trainer if you're new to exercise. I know my mom, she's a regular walker, but I wanted her to get into some resistance training because she's getting older. And resistance training is really important for maintaining your muscle mass as you get older, as well as helping you stay strong so that you can move and do all of the things that you want to do. So, like, my mom's a avid volunteer. She loves being in the community, being out and about. She loves the idea of living in her home. And so I said, Mom, all these things, if you're strong, become easier for you to maintain and do. And so I had her work with my coach, the one I trained with for the trial. Not to train for a triathlon, but just to teach my mom about the basic movements. And now I've started doing my personal training certificate so that I can eventually take over for her and give her that. Because if you're not used to resistance training, it can be really intimidating. Or if you're not used to exercising, it can be very scary. And so finding a coach that you match with, that is listening to your needs and your desires, is really key. So you could shop around to find the right one. But yes, those would be things that I would just start slow, pick something you like, and seek advice if you feel like you need it.
Excellent. And sort of a related point would be, what would you recommend for seniors or
Mm.
someone that does have some mobility issues
Mhm.
and maybe
Mhm.
doesn't have a lot of flexibility?
Mhm.
What would you recommend in that condition?
Yeah, and I'll in response to the last question too, if you haven't been moving much lately, you might want to just check in with your doctor. There are screening tools online like the Get Active questionnaire that can go over some like of the potential risk factors that you may need to consider. And your doctor will be able to also check through that as well. Even a physiotherapist could advise. And so for seniors, I mean, the same thing applies. I think um, it, you would want to work with somebody who knows how to work with older adults and knows. But like I said, my mom, who started resistance training at like 70, she is so strong now. She's 76. She's so strong. Um, yeah. And she didn't start when she was young, this was something totally new to her. So I think anything's possible. And I feel like, especially as we get older, we often get this mindset that, oh, we're too old to do that. No, no, no.
Yeah.
We need to shift that mindset.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
do it with assistance and with care, and make sure you've checked in with your doctor and are moving in ways that feel good for you, not overexerting yourself, and just sort of gradual and slow.
Yeah. It's never too late to start.
No.
And definitely check in with your doctor if you want to get started.
Hmm.
It's always great to check in with your doctor. Um, I now want to ask you, what are you reading these days? Given this is, a book club podcast, what are you
Hmm.
reading?
Well, I tend to read nonfiction. And I'm very much into sort of the self-help genre. So surprise, surprise, that's kind of what my book feels like. I'm reading The Immunity to Change right now. It's a different way to look at why it's difficult or what are your barriers to making and implementing change. Are you familiar with that one?
I
You know
actually
it?
I have a copy of it, and I haven't read it yet though, but it's on my to read list.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working through so it does have a lot of theory and it has some case studies, but there is like an exercise in there that you can do on yourself, which I'm like working through right now.
Very good.
So I like that. I'm
Yeah.
constantly experimenting and figuring out ways to sort of improve my own personal life
Yeah.
based on the research. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm definitely going to read that book. Definitely. Can you give us maybe your final thought on, your mind-body connection, and what
Yeah.
would you like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think we often think of the mind and the body, as separate things, but they're really one and the same. And when the body is healthy, the mind is healthier, and they really go hand in hand. And I think for many of us, this idea of exercising and working out, it might be foreign to us. And I think that we can start sort of demystifying it. It doesn't have to be that complex. And I think moving in ways that feel good for you is a great start.
Thank you so much for giving us your insights and the power of moving to help mind and body. The book is Move the Body, Heal the Mind by Dr. Jennifer Heisz. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.